everyone, I'm Melissa here and welcome to your Melissa Moment. Hello everyone, I'm Melissa here. Welcome to your Melissa Moment and welcome to Turn the Page Thursday. Stephen King, You Like It Darker. We have been reading the first short story in this book and I'm not sure what to think yet. If you've missed the first few installments of our book club, go back, start from the beginning, because I am going to talk about a little recap here, and there will be spoilers, and you do not want to hear those. So off you go if you haven't been following along. For those of you who have come back and are continuing this journey with me, how do you feel about where we're at in the story right now? Do you remember? The last time we read, we found out that when Laird and Butch were in the woods for their annual trip, they came across aliens. Now, we don't know what planet they came from, but they definitely were aliens. And they actually saved one of their lives, which resulted in them getting a gift. It seems like that gift is what helped them to be successful. I'm interested to see how this is going to play out. And I'm not sure how I feel about the alien angle yet. It's kind of like when you watched Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull. And you're like, yay, Indiana Jones, here we come. And then at the end, you find out it was aliens. And you kind of have that disappointment of, really? Aliens? I'm not sure if I'm there yet. I think we can finish this short story today, however. And that is what we're going to do. I think we have about maybe 6 to 8 pages left. So we're not going to set a timer today. We're just going to finish it up. I'm excited. Let's jump into it, shall we? Crazy, I agreed. I thought of telling him I dream about a burning barn. It had been incredibly vivid. I had tried several different ways to get into a story about a freak storm I'd been playing with for quite a while. Years, actually. It had originally occurred to me when I'd been about the age my son was now. I'd try this character, then that character, then some overview of the town where I wanted to set the thing. Once I even tried kicking things off with a weather bulletin. Nothing worked. I felt like a guy trying to open a safe when he's forgotten the combination. Then this morning, courtesy of my dream, I saw a bolt of lightning hitting a barn. I saw the weather vane, a rooster, turn red with the heat as fingers of fire spread down the barn's roof. I thought everything else would follow. No, I knew it. I picked up the thing that looked like a spectacle case from where we'd left it the previous night and tossed it from hand to hand. This did it, I said, then tossed it to Butch. He caught it and said, sure, what else? All that was over 40 years ago. But the passage of time has never caused me to believe my recollection of that night is faulty. Doubt has never crept in, and the pictures have never escaped my memory. Butch remembered it as well as I did. Yella, the light, passing out, the young man, the spectacle case. That case, so far as I know, is still in the cabin. We went out there a few more Novembers before Butch headed west, and each took a turn blowing on the embossed wave. But the case never opened for us again. Nor will it open for anyone else, I'm sure. Unless someone has stolen it, and why would they? It's still on the mantel of the fireplace, where Butch put it the last time we were there. The final thing Butch said to me before we left the cabin that day was that he didn't want to draw in his pad anymore, at least not for a while. "I want to paint," he said. "I have 1,000 ideas." I had only one, the burning barn that became the first scene in the lightning storm. But I felt sure others would follow. The door was open. All I had to do was walk through it. Sometimes I'm haunted by the idea that I'm a fake. Before he died, Butch said the same in several interviews. Is that surprising? I don't think so. We were one thing when we went into the woods of the fall of 1978. We were something else ever after. We became what we became. I suppose the question has to do with talent. Was it in us? Or was it something given to us, like a box of candy, because we saved Yella's life? Could we be proud of what we accomplished? Kind of a lifting up by the bootstraps deal? Or were we just a pair of posers, taking credit for what we never would have had if not for that night? What the fuck is talent anyway? I ask myself that question sometimes when I'm shaving or in the old book promotion days while waiting to go on television and sell my latest glut of make-believe, or when I'm watering my late wife's daylilies, especially then. What is it really? Why would I be chosen when so many others try so hard and would give anything to be chosen? Why are there so few at the top of the pyramid? Talent is supposed to be the answer. But where does it come from? And how does it grow? Why does it grow? Well, I tell myself we call it a gift, and we call ourselves gifted. But gifts are never really earned, are they? Only given. Talent is grace made visible. The young man said, "Nothing can give you what isn't already there." This is axiomatic. I hold on to that. Of course, he also said he felt sorry for us. Pop's story ended there. Maybe he lost interest in his fantasy version of that hunting trip in 1978, but I don't think so. Those last few lines felt like a climax to me. I pulled a proof copy of The Lightning Storm from the shelf over his desk, maybe the same one I'd looked at long after my mother's death. A ragged bolt of lightning struck the barn. It hit with a hollow bang, like the report of a shotgun muffled in a blanket. Jack barely had time to register it before the follow thunder bellowed. He saw the weather vane, an iron rooster, turn red with the heat and begin spinning even as it sagged and runnels of fire spread down the barn's roof. It didn't match the copy in the handwritten document exactly, but it was close. And better, I thought. Which meant nothing, I told myself. He held on to those lines, that image, because it was good, or good enough. That's all it means. I thought of my mother's call that day in November of 78. That was a lot of years ago, but I was clear on the first thing she said. Something happened to your father while they were on their hunting trip, and to Butch. She didn't want me to come home right away, she said, because both of them were all right, but that weekend for sure. She said they claimed to have gotten lost, although both of them knew the 30-mile too well for that to happen. Like the back of their hands, I murmured. That's what she said. But I went back to Pop's manuscript. I told her we'd had a close call in the woods. Some hunter had fired at what he thought was a deer. The bullet went between us. Which version was true? According to the manuscript, neither of them. I think that was when I started to believe Pop's story. Or, no, that's not quite right, because it was still too fantastic. But that's where the door opened to belief. Did he ever tell her what he thought was the real story? Was that possible? I thought it was. Marriage is honesty. It's also a repository of shattered secrets. He'd only filled half of the spiral notebooks. The rest of the pages were blank. I picked it up, meaning to put it back in the bottom drawer, and a sheet of paper fluttered out from between the last page and the back cover. I picked it up and saw it was a receipt from the incorporated town of Harlow made out to L&D Haulage, a company I'd thought defunct for at least 50 years and maybe longer. L&D had paid property taxes for the years 2010 to 2050 at current 2010 rates for a tract of land bordering on Jalassie Creek in the unincorporated township of TR90, paid it in a lump sum. One second, guys. I need a bit of a refresher. This is interesting. I sat back in Pop's chair, staring at the amount tendered. I think I said, "Holy fuck." Paying in advance at 2010 rates was probably a terrific deal. But to pay 40 years in advance in a town where most people were behind on their taxes was unheard of. According to this sheet, L&D Haulage, Laird Carmody, and Dave Laverdier, in other words, had forked over $110,000. Of course, by then they could afford it. But why? Only one answer seemed to fit. They had wanted to protect their little hunting cabin from development. Why? Because that otherworldly glasses case was still out there? It seemed unlikely. My guess was scavengers had long since stripped the cabin of anything even remotely valuable. What did seem likely, and now it was a little easier to believe, was that my father and his friend had decided to preserve the location where they had met belongings from another world. I decided to go out there. The network of woods, roads Pop and Uncle Butch used to get to Jalassie Creek was long gone. There's a housing development and a trailer park there now, both called Hemlock Run, nor does TR90 exist. These days, it's the incorporated town of Pritchard, named for a local hero who died in Vietnam. It's still the 30-mile wood on maps and GPS, but now it's just 10 miles of forest, if that. Maybe only 5. The rickety bridge is long gone, but there's another one, narrow but sturdy, a bit further downstream. It's Raison de Terre's Grace of Jesus Baptist Church, which sits on the Pritchard bank of the creek. I drove across it and parked in the church lot, although that day the Jalassie was so low, I could almost have walked across it, had I thought to wear my waders. I made my way back upstream and found the broken stubs of the old bridge sunk deep into weeds and ferns. I turned and saw the path to the cabin, now badly overgrown with bushes and brambles. It was marked by a sign that read, "No hunting, no trespassing, by order of game warden." I went, carefully, fearing poison ivy or poison oak, through the bushes. 1/4 mile, Pop had written. And I knew from my own trips out here, only a few, I had little interest in shooting creatures that couldn't shoot back. That was about right. I came to a locked gate I didn't remember. There was another sign on it, this one showing a frog, over the words, Hippity hoppity, get off my property. One of Pop's keys opens the gate. I walked around a curve, and there was the cabin. No one had maintained it. The roof hadn't caved in from years of snowfall, probably because it was partially protected by the interlaced branches of old-growth pine and spruce. But it was sway-backed and wouldn't last much longer. The board sides, once painted brown, were now a faded no color. The windows were bleared with dirt and pollen. The place was the very picture of desertion. But it apparently hadn't been vandalized, which I thought was sort of a miracle. Lines of some old poem, probably read in high school, occurred to me. Weave a circle round him thrice, and close your eyes with holy dread. I found the right key on Pop's ring and went inside to must and dust and heat, also to the skibble scrabble of the current tenants, mice or chipmunks, probably both. A deck of bicycle playing cards had been scattered across the eating table and on the floor, likely tossed by gusts of wind down the chimney. Once my father and his friends had played cribbage with those very cards. A fan of ash lay in front of the fireplace, but there was no graffiti and no empty cans or liquor bottles. A circle was woven around this place, I thought. I told myself, scolded myself, that I was being ridiculous. But maybe I wasn't. Hemlock Run, both parts of it, was close. Surely kids would have explored this far into the property, and surely hippity hoppity get off my property wouldn't have kept them away. But it seemed they had kept away. I looked at the sofa. If I sat on it now, dust would puff up in a cloud and mice might flee from beneath. But I could imagine a young man with blonde hair sitting there. A stranger my Uncle Butch had drawn with stars for eyes. It was easier to believe it had actually happened now that I was out here in a cabin Pop and Uncle Butch had paid to keep safe, if not sound, until the middle of the century. Much easier. Had either of them come out here again, possibly to retrieve a case that looked like it might contain spectacles? Not Butch. At least, not once he went off to the West Coast. But I don't think my father had either. They were done with it, and although I was Pop's heir, I felt like an intruder. I crossed the room and looked on the mantel, expecting nothing. But the gray case was there, covered by a scrim of dust. I reached for it and winced as I closed my hand around it, as if afraid it might give me an electric shock. It didn't. I wiped away the dust from the top and saw the wave, bright gold embossed on what might have been gray suede, except it didn't feel like suede, nor did it precisely feel like metal. There was no seam in the case. It was perfectly blank. This has been waiting for me, I thought. It was all true, every word. And this is now part of my inheritance. Did I believe my father's story then? I almost did. And had he left the case for me? The answer to that is more difficult. I couldn't ask the two talented Bastites who came out here to hunt in November of 1978, because they were both dead. They had made their mark on the world, paintings, stories, and then left it. The young man who wasn't a man said the gift was for them, because Pop had shot the not woman up with the EpiPen, and Uncle Butch had given her his, I quote, precious breath. He didn't say it was just for them, though, did he? And if Pop's breath had opened it, might not mine do the same? Same blood, same DNA. Would it open sesame for me? Did I dare try it? What have I told you about myself? Let's see. You know that I was Castle County School Superintendent for many years before I retired to become my father's amanuensis, not to mention the one who changed his bedding if he wet himself during the night. You know that I was married and my wife left me. You know that on the day when I stood in that decaying cabin looking at a gray case from another world, I was alone. Parents dead, wife gone, no kids. Those are the things you know. But there's a universe of things you don't know. I suppose that's true of every man Jack and woman Jill on earth. I'm not going to tell you much. Not just because it would take too long, but because it would bore you. If I told you I drank too much after Susan left me, would you care? That I had a brief romance with internet pornography? That I thought of suicide, but never seriously? I will tell you two things. Even though both of them embarrass me almost, but not quite to the point of shame, they are sad things. The daydreams of men and women of a certain age are always sad. I think because they run so counter to the plain vanilla futures we have to look forward to. I have some writing talent, as I hope this memoir will show, and I dreamed of writing a great novel, one for the ages. I loved my father and I love him still, but living in his shadow became tiresome. I daydreamed of critics saying the depth of Mark Carmody's novel makes his father's work look shabby. The pupil has truly outshone the teacher. I don't want to feel that way, and mostly I don't. Yet part of me does and always will. That part of me is a cave dweller who grins a lot, but never smiles. I can play the piano, but not well. I am asked to accompany the hymns at the Congo church only if Mrs. Stanhope is out of town or under the weather. I'm a plodder and a thumper of keys. My ability to read music is on the third grade level. I have polish only on the 3 or 4 pieces that I have memorized, and people get tired of hearing those. I daydream about writing that great novel, but it's not the most powerful daydream I have. Shall I tell you what it is? Having come this far, why not? I'm in a nightclub, and all my friends are there. My father is too. The band has left the stand, and I ask if I can play a tune on the piano. The band leader, of course, says yes. My pop groans. Oh, God, Marky, not bring it on home to me again. I say with appropriate modesty, no. I learned something new and started to play the Albert Ammons classic Boogie Woogie Stomp. My fingers are flying. Conversation ceases. They stare at me, amazed, admiring. The drummer resumes his seat and picks up the beat. The horn guy starts blowing a dirty alto sax like the one in Tequila. The audience starts to clap along, some of them jitterbug, and when I finish, standing for the final right-hand glissando like Jerry Lee Lewis, they get up on their feet and yell for more. You can't see me, but I'm blushing as I write this. Not just because it's my most treasured fantasy, but because it's so common. All over the world, even now, women are playing air guitar like Joan Jett, and men are pretending to conduct Beethoven's Fifth in their rec rooms. These are the ordinary fantasies of those who would give anything to be chosen and are not. In that dusty, ready-to-fall-down cabin where two men once met a being from another world, I thought I would love to play Boogie Woogie Stomp like Albert Ammons just once. Once would be enough, I told myself, knowing it would not be. It never is. I blew on the wave. A line appeared in the middle of the case, held for a moment, and then disappeared. I stood there for a while, holding the case, then put it back on the mantel. I remembered the young man saying, "Nothing can give you what isn't already there." "It's all right," I said, and a little laugh. It wasn't all right. It stung. But I understood. The sting would go away. I'd go back to my life, and the sting would go away. I had my famous father's affairs to tie up. That would keep me busy. And I'd have plenty of money. Maybe I'd go to Aruba. It's all right to want what you can't have. You live to learn with it. I tell myself that. And mostly, I believe it. Wow. That concludes the first story. I love that ending. I love that ending. I think I'm okay with the aliens now. The moral and the way they finish that story. I mean, they're right. Everyone has a dream. Everyone does. They're all different. Some are the same. But everyone has a dream unique to them. And the story's right. You have to have talent to be successful in that dream. And if you don't have it, you don't have it. You can try. You can even do it. But to actually be successful. Wow. What did you guys think? What did you guys think of the first short story in You Like It Darker? Let me know in the comments. That means next week we start a brand new story, you guys. Brand new short story. Should I tell you the name? Okay. The next story that we will be reading next week is entitled The Fifth Step. And I do believe, let me just check real quick. It is a short story, and I'm talking short. Like, we are going to start it and we are going to end it next week. The Fifth Step. Stephen King, You Like It Darker. Can't wait to see what the next story brings. Until then, friends, have a great day. We'll see you then.